Today we're going to be doing an upgrade that the military actually did. They went to LED headlights for good reason, actually. Not to be cool or any of that, but because there was an issue with the original lighting as far as how well you could see with it. And then also the whole vibration thing and all that. I'm not going to get into it too much, but let's get to how we arrived at this situation. I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, but I have a tendency to ramble. I was working on the Deuce a while back, and we're checking out some stuff to get ready to put it on the road, and I put on the lights, and the dash lights, and the high beam light was on. I'm like, okay, so, you know, I go to hit the switch on the floor. I'm like, okay, so it's just the lights are on and the high beam's on. No. So then I hit the switch and the light gets brighter. Okay. The little indicator for the high beam gets brighter. I'm going, well, maybe this one is set up that way. I don't know. I'm thinking, that doesn't sound right. So we go to the front of the truck, and I noticed that both headlights work, but one is kind of brighter than the other, and it switches when you click the switch. Well, so I bet I know what's going on here. So I undid the headlight, and sure enough, as you may or may not know, the plug's not quite the same as a non-military vehicle, of course, and it's also waterproof. So the three plugs, where you would have three prongs and just plug one plug in, there's three individual plugs. You have a 16, or what people like to call a 91, a 17, and an 18. And so what had happened is, if I remember correctly, someone had switched the 16 with the 18 on the passenger side headlight. And I think I know why they did it. I think that they were trying to get home, or trying to not look like they had a padiddle. To make a long story short, I reconnected it, and as I suspected, the little beam was burned out on that one light. So I had to get a new light. And I wanted to upgrade at some point. I didn't really... money was an issue, but I didn't want to waste my money on a regular headlight if I'm going to upgrade, because I already knew that the standard headlight that goes in there is not that bright. And there's another way you can do it. Gila makes a light kit that you can put in, which is not LED, that you can put bulbs in and go that route. I chose not to go that route for a couple different reasons. And as I mentioned, the military themselves upgraded, so the light's actually set up correctly, and already set up. There's not a universal connection. There isn't an adapter. It's set up that way. I ordered a headlight from off of eBay. I bid on it and got it for a fairly decent price. Wasn't an unheard of price, but it was a good price. And then after I purchased it, I was looking at my purchase, and sure enough, it was supposed to be the truck light. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it's 0371 or something. Like, don't quote me on that. It's something like that. I have a couple different numbers on my head. Also because the military used truck light, and they use JW speaker, and there's a couple different lights and light assemblies that they used, and that being one of them. As the light was on its way, I realized that the description was correct as far as that right light. However, the picture wasn't. And I'm going, wait a minute. So I emailed the seller to make sure that indeed what I'd ordered was coming, and it was, I believe the answer was it should be. Okay. It arrived, and pretty much it was as pictured, not as stated. It was a Wagner headlight in a bucket that was marked with a sticker like that one, like the sticker on this one, but it had a Wagner headlight in it, which I don't believe was LED to begin with. So anyways, I ended up emailing back. He said, if you have any issues, you know, when I had sent that first email, he said, if you have any issues, you know, let me know. Well, sure enough, like I said, I did. So that ended up going back. It just got back there yesterday, I believe. So, well, that's what my tracking says. It's there. So I should be getting a refund for that pretty soon. Something like within 2 days or whatever, 2 working days when they receive it. Hopefully that'll be all taken care of. But I don't honestly know if he got duped with that and should go after a supplier if that's the case, if someone supplied that to him, or if that light got switched out intentionally. You know, I don't know. I'm not going to mention the name of the person because I don't know what happened, and the refund should take care of things, but just be careful of that. If you're getting one of these LED truck lights that's supposed to be a truck light, not only will it say truck light right on it, as you can see, probably this is kind of a flat face, and there are 10 diodes in here, I believe, 10 little lights, and so that's kind of a dead giveaway as to what it is. The other thing is I got the whole assembly. It's actually, I mean, you can find them, but it is kind of hard to find just the lights. And part of the reason why I got the whole assembly is, you know, those are probably originally assemblies in the truck, and, you know, they've been painted or whatever, and they might not be the assemblies that quite fit these lights. There are a few of, I think, the earlier assemblies, don't quote me on which ones it is, that are set up a little bit different, so they don't quite fit this light, the upgraded light right, and all that good stuff. So you're better off getting it as a unit, at least the first time. Hopefully you don't have to get another one, but they're supposed to last a lot longer than the original headlights. They're brighter, all that good stuff. And I will mention it is some LEDs aren't even as bright as the original lights you're replacing. Sometimes you have to be careful about that. Not so much on the Deuce because, as I said, the Deuce lighting was poor to begin with. But anyways, you know, and also, you know, you can't just go on looms and stuff like that if you read up on it. It's a little bit confusing if you get into it, but it's not that confusing. But all the lights aren't created equal. As I said, the connectors, you know, there's versions out there that say plug and play, and that's somewhat of a misleading statement, because even if they kind of are, it's usually there's an adapter, which means there's more connections than you originally had, which means there's more possible points of failure. I'm not saying that they're gonna fail there, so there's more possible points of failure, and then you've got that extra piece of harness inside here trying to stuff it in there and all that. You know, they're doing that. So anyways, let's just take a quick look at this light. You know, as I said, this is a setup, blah, blah, blah. So that's that. So we'll go over here, bring you over to the light itself. And, you know, this is kind of long and drawn out. It really is real easy to replace these. But a couple little things here and there that you might or might not run into. And a couple things you should do. When you replace them, if you've got new buckets, put the new buckets in. Don't just take the ring off and put the headlight in the bucket. You know, technically, if they've sold it to you that way, you've taken it apart if you take it out of the bucket. However, when you take the old ones off, you're probably going to want to take it out. You're going to want to take the old headlight out of the bucket. And I highly recommend that if you're just upgrading, especially, save the old headlights that still work in case you run into a bind and you got a headlight out. You have one. Also on that subject, if you are replacing the headlights in a Deuce, and even if you go with the regular old headlights that were in it, I don't suggest that you just get one and splice it or whatever, because you lose the properties of the original light, the waterproofness part of that. Not that you really want to be driving in water that deep, but anyways, I don't such a, and you can get, I've seen them, the original style military headlight to go for as little as $25, but between $25 and $60, you can probably get one all day for $30. You might have to wait a couple days for it to get here, but honestly, in most cases, when you need to replace a headlight like that, you aren't going to not be able to drive the vehicle. You might get pulled over a couple times, but you can get the headlight here within 3 days. But enough about that. We're going to disassemble this. I'm going to show you bits and pieces of that. The reason why you're going to disassemble it this way is so that it's easier to take the plugs off the back side, less chance of ripping your connector on the back side and stuff. And keep your old buckets, I suggest, if they're good. Again, in case you need one for something goes on and you need a connector or whatever. Okay, rather than find a perch for you guys, I'm just going to tell you real quick how this ring comes off, because it is pretty simple. 1, 2, 3 screws. You pop that ring off, and you take your head out. You might want to be a little careful so you don't just bang your headlight on the grill piece here. And then we'll show you when we get to the wires inside, and just taking those off. Now we got a headlight hanging out, and we can get to those 3 plugs. What you probably won't be able to see in the video is each one of these on the side of their plugs have a number, and then the tags have a number on them as well. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that. I could put it in a mode to make the picture bigger, but I'm going to be lazy and I'm not going to do it. So we'll see if you can see those numbers on there, but they're numbered. We're going to take, and I'm just going to reach in here and grab on the outside of one of these. I'm going to twist it just a little bit just to make sure it breaks free, if it will. And then I'll pull it out. And there you go, there's your connector. And then I'm going to do that 3 times. But anyways, you get the idea of that. So rather than try to hold the camera and do this at the same time, I'm just going to explain to you the best way I know of to take off those back connectors without ripping them if they're sticking or so on and so forth. So basically, you reach your hand in the front side, and I don't know if you can see me turning my hand in the camera, but you can turn that. It's like a bulkhead that goes through the other side. So you need to hold that still with one hand. And then let's climb up here and get to the back side here. And this is where the plugs, where the bulkheads go through, obviously. And then you just grab a hold of one of these, and you still got one hand holding the other side, and you can twist this to break a little bit of break some tension free. It may be stuck to the plug. The actual rubber boot might be stuck to the plug, kind of. Break that free, and then pull it back. Sometimes you'll take something, and after you've done that, you'll pry in between here. I don't know if you can see where my thumb is, and you'll either do that by hand or do it with a screwdriver or something, and carefully pry that apart, because the whole idea is to try to not rip the boots, and if they're old or whatever. Grabbing this with a set of pliers is not a good idea, because you can, pretty good grip on there, and you can rip the boot. It can be done, but you can rip the boot. So anyways, that's what you do. I'm gonna just do it. Sometimes there can be buggers you get off, and occasionally they're in such bad shape that the boot tears and you've got to replace them and all that fun stuff. And I suggest you do it right. Don't do the friggin' going to get one of those bullets from what we call a bullet connector from, you know, your local parts store. That's just a cheesy version of the real type connector. Don't do that unless you're in an absolute pinch and have to do it and gonna fix it later. At some point we'll get into some sort of, I'll get into some sort of showing you how to properly crimp those wires, because I do have the tool to do that with. But anyways, I'm going to get this off, and we're going to put the new one in. Also, I already took the bolts out of here, but let's just show you. You can kind of, once you have the hood up, you can kind of, a lot of times you can just put your hand in here like this and hold that rubber, and it's just enough after you've put in the penetrating oil on the threads there on this other side. It's just enough to hold that still enough so when you take the ratchet to it, it'll break free and you can hold it from spinning and you'll get the nut off. If you do have to get into it, you have to take off 2 bolts. There's a spring on here, but it kind of, you can flop it over and then you can get into the actual bolts on these. There's a bolt, a nut on this side as well, and you can grab a hold of that and get that out and do it that way if you have to. But anyways, that's enough on that. Let's get to the business of pulling this headlight bucket out. Again, I'm going to say it again. You know, I'm going through all the explanations and all that stuff, and not that I'm an absolute expert. But it really doesn't take that much time to do it. It takes more time to kind of explain different things, and it depends on if you've got a stuck bolt or something like that, which is not super common with these. Someone breaking a connector is, you know, you got to watch out for that. And as I said, they're all labeled. I don't know if the camera's picking up on it. The numbers are inside there next to the connectors. Makes it real easy, even though the connectors are all the same. Like you could plug a 17 into 18 when it's not supposed to be done that way, and vice versa, or 16. The 16 is your ground, or some people like to look at it as a 91. And if you look at one, you'll see why, but it is actually a 16. And then it's grounded to the frame, so if you had to replace that, you can look at that, see if your grounds, make sure your grounds are good and all that. The contacts are already got dye grease in them, whatever brand they put in there. Personally, I prefer the stuff from Permatex. Most dielectric grease is good, but not all of it's created equal. Some of it turns into a chalky paste after a while. That stuff is crap. I'm not going to mention any company names that make it, because I don't want to pick on a particular company, and I think the company that actually dealt with it had something that was like that, actually made 2 different dielectric greases, and one just turns into that paste after a while and deteriorates. So what you should kind of do is coat the outside of this bulkhead connector, just so it's not so much about it sealing against the weather as it is about keeping it somewhat lubricated, so that it will so that it doesn't, the outside of this connector doesn't get sticked and weld itself to that, with more of a chance that it won't. And when I say a little bit, you literally put a little bit on your finger and then you rub it around, and you can probably use the same little dab on all 3 connectors, just enough so you can feel that there's some on there. And just do that, and then connect up. And of course you can, the ground one's easy. You don't even have to look at the number on the thing. You just grab it and you can see it's connected to ground. You're probably not getting that in the camera. And then push your boot all the way on and make sure she's all the way on there. Okay. Then the other 2, I'm going to grab it up, and all you really have to do is read one of the 2 numbers on here. Okay. And and that is the 18. You're probably not going to see that in the camera, but that is the 18. And then you look over here and you see that this is the 18 on here. And I'm going to just take this, stick it in there like so. But first, I think this got moved some, so that like that, it did. Line it up, flip it on, make sure it's pushed in the back, the wire itself, and get the other one. Same idea. Push it on, make sure your wires, and then you're done. And that's all there is really to it. If you're having any friggin' issues or whatever, putting them in, rusty, sticky bolts, whatever, I might have a trick or two that would work for you. And you just want to be kind of careful when you're taking them out. Just that way you avoid, ripping boots and that kind of stuff. All right. So next, we're going to show you what it looks like when you turn them on and the difference between the regular lights and the LEDs. Headlights on. These are the stalkers. Ready? There. That's the stock headlight, low beam. I do have a low beam mount. I'll show you that just for reference anyways later, but let's put the high beams on. Okay. And that's what you get with the high beams. Low beams. Okay. Let's just step out of the truck. Just kind of show you. This kind of started the whole thing. I was getting ready to get it on the road and realized we had a light out, so of course you look at the front of the truck and okay, I know it's pretty dark in here, but now that we got the LED headlights on, let's see what the effect is. Let's see how good these things really are. Oh my word! Look at the difference. It's like night and day. And that's the low beams. Let's go out there and take a look at it. I mean, my word, this is nice. Okay, it even shines light back here. It's like broad daylight out here. Oh my word. Look at that. I mean, the light it throws is amazing. Just amazing. Okay, yes, it's low beams, but no, it's the middle of the day. A little later, we'll show you what the difference really is. 8 hours later. Okay, so now we'll do the true shot of what it looks like with the LEDs. And there you have it. It's a bit brighter on low beams now. Let's see what the high beams look like. So definitely a difference. And we haven't made them or anything yet. We might do that later just to make sure they're right on track, but they look pretty good. Alright, just thought I'd show you that.